Good evening and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you to everyone who has joined us today. I am Hilaal, the co-head of project management campaigns and events at the MSA Union, and I'm joined by my fellow co-head, Imad Nur Mohammed. On behalf of the MSA Union and our politics portfolio, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for making the time to join us today. Thank you to Azra Sirat, who has spent a lot of time organizing this event. Thank you to management and team at Hyatt, Altaf, and Atif, and the rest of their teams. Thank you to each and every one of our speakers for making the time to be with us today. Most importantly, thank you to Kanita for joining us. We really appreciate it, and at the same time, we'd like to congratulate her for receiving the news that she passed her master's. Quickly also, thank you to our donors, Crystal Leaf, as well as our media teams, INX, Hilaal, Radio Islam. Thank you to our friends, family, and colleagues who have joined us today. We are extremely excited, in a gathering of this type of thing. It's really heartwarming to see such influential and honorable members present here today. Creating these platforms shine a light on political engagement, which is imperative as it aids in creating an environment of informed voters. So we hope that today serves to be as constructive as we envision it to be. Thank you, and over to you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Conita Hunter. I am your facilitator for this evening's very important election discussion. And thank you to the MSA Union for engaging in political debate and discourse as we head to a very important political moment for South Africa, the 2024 election, which has been fashioned as important as the 1994 election. In 34 days' time, 27,782,000, I'm having a Jacob Zuma moment, let me start again. 27,782,477 registered voters have the opportunity to decide who will work for us for the next 5 years. We are effectively going to the ballot booth to appoint 847 employees, workers. Some of them may be here tonight. 847 is the number. I'm having another Zuma moment. 887 seats are up for grabs. 400 in the National Assembly and 487 in the provincial legislatures. Right? These are the men and women that decide how money is spent, that decide legislation, that governs our lives, and more importantly, decides the future trajectory of South Africa. Because politics matters. And we cannot stand here today as young people or as South Africans and believe that voting does not matter. The price of freedom was too expensive in South Africa for us to take this moment for granted. And so I do not have to preach to the converted here tonight to say, we have to vote. So then the second question comes is, who do we vote for? I want to start off by saying that there's an anomaly here today. That of the 27 million registered voters, 55.2% are women. Yet our political discourse, as you can see tonight, is centered around males. 44% only of registered voters are men, and even less a percentage of who actually turns up to vote. But let's talk about young people, because that's who we're focusing on today. There are around 2 million eligible 18 and 19-year-olds who can vote in this election. 550,000 registered to vote. In the voters' roll, 20 to 29 young people, 4.4 million. So this discussion today is, who should the 5 million young people under 30s that are registered to vote, who should they vote for? And why should they vote for you? Now, this election, there are 70 unique political parties that are contesting. So these 5 are less than 10% of who's actually on the ballot. We have a very long ballot with 2 columns on a national level. We now have a regional ballot, which we've never had before, and then we obviously have a provincial ballot. So 70 unique parties, 11 independent candidates, all vying for 887 seats. Now I had a very interesting figure today, and maths is not my strong point, which is why I became a journalist. But there are 14,903 people like the 5 of them today that are contesting these 887 seats. So you actually have a 1 in 18 chance, Irfan. Just remember that when you go to sleep tonight. Those odds are not very strong. Some have better odds than others. So let's go through the engagement of how we're going to go through tonight's discourse. It's 6:25. At 6:30, each one of you will be given an opportunity for 3 minutes, and 3 minutes, we're going to stick to time, to make your pitch to young voters. Why should young voters vote for you? We will start just in order of coherence, from the EFF all the way down to the ActionSA, just in the way that you are sitting. Afterwards, we will then have a Q&A, and then we will take questions from the audience and from the online audience. Questions must be brief. We will not tolerate heckling from the audience. Please applause once the speakers are done, and allow people to finish their thought. This is not about one-upmanship tonight. This really is about a coherent offering to young people to empower South Africans to decide who they should vote for. So what makes this election interesting? 30 years is a very important milestone for democracies all over the world. Particularly in the African continent, we've seen liberation movements last about 3 decades, and then their majority is questioned and their majority is declined. You saw it in Zambia, we saw it in Angola, you saw it in other countries. And so this moment, the ANC faces a very real possibility of it losing its majority. Almost certainly in some provinces, but more possibly on a national level. And that brings us to an era of coalitions, which we've seen on a local government election level since 2016, and Tapelo, you can talk to us a little bit about that. But we've seen it worse in 2021. Coalitions are not good or bad, they are the outcome of democratic vote. However, they've come with a lot of instability. And the negotiations the problem with coalition is that the negotiations that happen before a government is formed happen behind closed doors. It's not a legal document, the agreements that are signed, and we don't know what goes into these agreements. And so, while this election is pretty much about the big political parties, the ANC, the DA, the EFF, there's also the rise of the smaller political parties that could play a kingmaker role, as we've seen in the city of Joburg, where 2% party or 0.2% party could become the mayor. And so we've had a test run with coalitions in local government. It has not been pretty, but obviously the country is now gearing for that on a national level. So, how do you decide who to vote for? That's a question that I've been asked a lot of the time. I think more than anything, engage political parties on their manifestos, read. Secondly, believe politicians when they tell us who they are. So when you see politicians beating each other up in the council, in a city council, believe them that that's what they stand for. And more importantly, I think 2024 the election in 2024 comes at a time of rampant unemployment, persisting poverty, and untenable inequality. We cannot discuss politics without focusing on this underlying dynamic in South Africa. And so before I hand over to the political parties to make a pitch to young voters, I want to say that I don't think any one of us here on stage or in the room I don't think any of us doesn't want a better South Africa. So we have that in common. We are patriotic and we show up for our country. And this election is about showing up for the next 30 years of our country. Because we cannot take for granted that the liberties that we had, that freedom of 1994 brought us, will be sustained for another 30 years if we don't do the bare minimum of a participatory democracy, which is participation. And so there's no case to be made for voting because participation is the bare minimum. And so today, ladies and gentlemen, we have an opportunity to decide who we're going to vote for. And let me call on stage Mubarak Basha, representing the EFF, followed immediately after that by Fasiha Hassan, representing the ANC, Irfan Mangera, representing RiseMzansi, Tepelo Ahmad, representing Al-Jama-ah, and Mohammed Lockhart, representing ActionSA. You have 3 minutes. I'm looking for a volunteer for the clock. We have a volunteer for the clock. 3 minutes. Please respect time and make your pitches fun. You want to come up here and then we'll sit down for questions. Right. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum. Greetings, everyone. There was a miscommunication. My leader, Karl Nia, supposed to debate here. So there was a miscommunication. They put my picture. So Karl Nia is here. He's going to take a platform. I'm just here to inform that. Right. You can proceed. No, it's fine. Let him take over. He's very good in it, what he does. Jazakallah. Karl, come over here.
Well, I'm being put on the spot. And I have the wrong grey hair to be with the rest of this very young panel. But let me start with saying that I believe, and the economic freedom fighters believe, that we need young leadership. The old people have failed us. I, as part of that old people, must carry part of that responsibility. We have led South Africa over the past 30 years into the doldrums. Economic mismanagement, underdevelopment. We have the highest levels of unemployment amongst young people in the world, the biggest unequal society. So we need to have young leaders. I believe that the economic freedom fighters have those young leaders. We have an incredible charismatic president in President Julius Malema, a man who stands on his principles, who can articulate his views, and who has built a political party over 10 years that is next to none. And this is very important for the voter to remember, that there is a well-organized, properly managed political party which has been built by young leadership over a period of 10 years. Now, what does the EFF stand for? The EFF stands for the return of the land to the people, expropriation of land without compensation. We stand for the nationalization of the South African Reserve Bank, for fighting crime, for creating jobs, for bringing an end to load shedding, making sure that every young person in this country and every South African will be able to reach their full potential. This is critically important, and it is set out, and Mubarak, can you please hold up the manifesto of the EFF? 255 pages of detailed research of how we're going to bring an end to load shedding, how we will expropriate land without undermining investment, how we will create jobs. And any of you who take the decision to vote in this upcoming election, and indeed all of you should, I call on you to read that manifesto. And let me conclude lastly. There is no other political party that has a better and stronger policy about Palestine, against apartheid Israel, and the genocide that is being committed there.
Thank you very much.
It is the EFF
Thank you very much, Mr. Nias.
Tabled the resolution that the Israeli embassy must be closed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I'm a little short, so I'm going to move this, but I don't want to mess up anything. Don't start my timer. Don't start my time. I'm just going to put this here. Yeah. Okay, seems good. All right, assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Fasiya Hassan and I'm here representing the African National Congress. I am 30 years old, I'm from the Muslim community. My family hails from Fitas and from Actonville in Benoni. So I'm born and bred in Gauteng, and I think it's important for us to understand who we are and where we come from before I say what I need to say. Representing the ANC isn't always an easy job, especially on these sorts of platforms. But I'm going to speak openly, I'm going to speak honestly, and I'm going to speak genuinely from my heart. We have a foundation of 30 years of freedom, and we have the next 30 years in which we need to build on the current foundations that we have to build a better life with better opportunities. The ANC manifesto has 6 important priorities. A jobs plan, we want to put South Africans to work. Industrialization and expanding infrastructure to grow an inclusive economy, that's number 2. Tackling the cost of living, providing income support. Number 4 is investing in people and meeting our basic needs. Number 5 is defending our democracy and advancing freedom. And number 6 is building a better Africa and a better world. And it is through these priorities in our manifesto that we will put South Africa back on track. We are the only political party with a track record, the only political party with a level of transparency that can take us forward, and the only political party that has the experience that we need to really drive South Africa at a faster progress level, more action, more accountability, citizen involvement, and of course doing more together as a better life for all. The development of South Africa is also inherently linked to the ANC. Even criticism of the African National Congress, which I'm sure there will be much of tonight, is in fact a strength of this democracy and a strength of the same democracy that was fought for and won by the very same African National Congress. And we represent the aspirations of all people, including our critics. And that strength of that democracy is fundamentally important. But there's a much bigger issue here at play. And there's something that we have to be very honest about. Things in 2024 are better than they were in 1994. And there are objective metrics that have come out of the census 2022. More people have access to electricity, more people have access to water, more people have access to bulk services. But very importantly, the biggest victory and why the ANC should continue to have the mandate from young people especially, our biggest victory has been to restore the dignity of our people. There was once a time in this country where the majority of us were foreigners in our own land, where we did not have the right of citizenship. We were escalated and shoved away to Bantustans by the apartheid government. And those are things we often take for granted. But the reality is that this venue, as multicultural and multi-diversity it is, would not even have been possible without those different interventions and that fight against apartheid. And I think that's very important because there's a testament to how far we've come as a country. And when we're talking about this, we're talking about the restoration of people's basic humanity and the restoration of their rights, which is no small victory. And I will be unpacking that, I'm sure, in some of the questions and answers as we go forward. Thank you very much.
Your time starts now.
Assalamu alaikum. It's a privilege to be here, especially as somebody who has served as the Secretary General of the MSA Union 2 terms ago. The MSA is a special place in my heart and in my leadership journey, and it's primarily why I've taken this step into leadership. I'm one of the 8 founding members of RiseMzansi, a team of young leaders and concerned South Africans who've come together to build an alternative South African political vehicle because we think that this country is ripe for change that is led from a grassroots level and from a people-centered perspective. It is quite clear today that we all know the issues and that our country is going down a path that we are all deeply worried about. And you're right, Garnita, all of us here are interested in that future, but we all have different views on how to get there. So what RISE has done deliberately is to build a consensus amongst society, working with NGOs, social movements, young people. Our party is made up predominantly of youth. We have deliberately, from a launch over a year and 1 week ago, to get young people registered to vote, because we think the young people and the 14 million who are eligible and not voting are primary drivers of the problem we have, in that participatory democracy is not working in its current form. And so currently we think that we need a new form of politics, a new political culture if you must, and that must start from each and one of us as citizens of this country who are concerned. But that can only happen when we have a plan and we have common values on how to get there. RISE has put together 5 values we think the predominant South African society believes in, which are justice, freedom, equality, integrity, and solidarity. These 5 are what guides our decisions in coalitions, in working with others, and in developing this plan, which came about after working with over 300 communities. These engagements are a blueprint for how we think we can get South Africa out of the mess we're in. I'm just going to briefly speak and end off on this, in that South Africa requires new leaders. We see great leaders in the sports field, in arts and culture, but not in politics. It's because politicians have become lazy, they are old, they don't have the right ideas, and they're unimaginative. Because of them being unimaginative, they have no ideas on how to rebuild and reactivate the system to make it work for the majority who are still marginalized and in poverty. So for us, we're saying we need the best to lead, and therefore, we went on a year-long campaign to go and solicit the support from communities to nominate their own leaders who they think can be part and parcel of this journey. We've gotten doctors, lawyers, accountants, policymakers, but also grassroots activists like myself who spent 15 years in active citizenry, building movements, and who have the ability to lead at different levels. We need to shake up the system, and for that, we need new leaders who have fresh ideas.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would like to believe that this is the audience it's an Islamic audience, and by virtue of us being invited by the MSA, which is predominantly advocating for issues of Muslim students. And I would like to acknowledge my party leader, Honorable Hanif Hendricks, who's here, who's a founding member of the MSA, by the way, and won the award, a futuristic award of the internet through the MWeb. Honorable Hanif Hendricks, we would like to acknowledge you. Assalamu alaikum. And assalamu alaikum to my colleagues, the panelists here. So Al-Jama-ah, when we started our campaign in 2021, fundamentally our campaign was leveling the playing field. Leveling the playing field, it means that Al-Jama-ah today is no longer perceived as one of the small parties, but however we've leveled the playing field. We are now no longer Fasiha, a 0 point. the moderator, my apologies, a 0.something% party, because in a coalition, there isn't an outright majority, so all of us, we are a minority. Then we need each other as a political organization. It's new versus old. So we have achieved first the MSA. That is one of things that we need to take pride on as the party, Al-Jama-ah. Secondly, leading the city, the biggest economic hub in Africa. Just recently, through the executive mayor, Kabelo Kwamanda, we've just launched 3 power stations as an alternative energy to fight the scourge of the load shedding. That is one of the achievements that we're taking pride on. One is in Alexandra, one is in Vleehof, and the other one is in Mayfair, just by the way. And then thirdly, what we wanted to say, what I wanted to put across to Muslims is that إِذَا فَاتَكَ الْحَيَاةَ فَاسْنَعْ مَا شِئْتَ. So it is a principle that we need to uphold as Muslims, precisely when we're going to vote. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, if haya or modesty exits from you, you can do whatever that you want. So to my brother Irfan, I would like to advise that I hear that you want to fight the scourge of corruption as RiseMzansi. So the advice to you is that if you take a drop of urine and you put it in a cup of water, the water is contaminated according to Islam. So the 15 million, everyone knows that you are already contaminated. So for me, if I was a voter, unfortunately, I wouldn't bet for that horse. So yeah, so another achievement that we've done as
Your time is up, Mr. Ahmad.
I'll take questions.
Can I take this out? Okay.
No, please keep it on the stand.
Okay. Oops. Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, my name is Mohammed Lokat. I'm not going to regale us with the statistics of the problems that our country is facing. I'm not going to regale us with my personal background. What I'm going to talk about is what I experienced when I joined ActionSA. I think I've been invited into people's homes. I've spoken to people from all walks of life, and I've heard their stories. And people are deeply unhappy with the current state of South Africa as it stands. But one thing that's been confirmed for me is that there's a fundamental decency and goodness to all South Africans. And that's why I think we can turn this corner and fight any challenges that we face at this moment. And we've got a bright future ahead of us. But what we're going to do, and what ActionSA advocates deeply for, is that we need to invest in our country and its people. Infrastructure, maintenance of infrastructure, implementing the policies that we have in terms of healthcare, education, but all underpinned by a corruption-free civil service, government, and bureaucracy. These are the policies that I'm fighting for, and these are the policies that we want to see implemented by a government that cares for its people. So I'm an ordinary guy. I came from work. I had to change in the bathroom into my ActionSA shirt. I work down the road. And that's the reason why I was drawn to ActionSA, because our president, Herman Mashaba, he's an ordinary guy that could live his life not bothering about the problems of this country. But he stepped into the arena, and he's here, and he wants to fight. The state of our country because he's deeply unhappy with it, and I ascribe to that vision. That's the same vision that says that we can walk outside the street today and feel safe walking about it. That we have equality in terms of where we come from, what we earn. That no kids go to bed hungry in this country. That we don't suffer from youth unemployment that we're facing, and where we have safe communities. These are the things, these are the bread and butter issues that we all need to fight for, and what ActionSA has a clear plan on addressing. So just to end off with, ActionSA is the only party that came onto the scene. We've got a track record, we've attracted votes, and we've got representatives from all walks of life be it urban, be it rural, and we have a track record that's clean. We're not tainted by corruption. Where we've served, we haven't been power hungry. We've exited coalitions that are unworkable. We haven't stayed in them for longer than what's needed. And we've got a pragmatic response to many of the issues that we're facing in South Africa, which I'll speak to. So that's why I support ActionSA, and that's what I hope we're going to be talking about tonight. Jazakallah.
Thank you very much to our panelists. We obviously are joined late by AM4C representative Itani. Thank you for joining us. You have 3 minutes to make your submission, and then we'll have questions.
Thank you very much.
Your 3 minutes starts now.
All right, thank you very much. Apologies for arriving late. I was held up on some other work for the party. My name is Itani Rasalanago, and I wish to stand with the protocol that has been observed and also acknowledge that I see many faces that are common that we have met on the struggle, not only on the Palestinian cause, but also for the struggle of South Africans and South Africa as a whole. It is great to be here. Assalamu alaikum, dumelang, ndayandu. I am here to introduce the Allied Movement for Change, which is a party that is most likely going to be new to many of us. However, it is not a new party in the political scene. It has been contesting local government since 2013, which has been 11 years now. It has held seats in different municipalities, having councillors and peer councillors on different municipalities. Now, going to the elections in 2024, a decision was taken to go for elections at national level, informed by the fact that the party has grown. The party has grown in length in terms of membership. And in the process, the party managed to acquire membership of some of the great leaders that we have within our country. One of them being the president of the party, who is new to the party, who has been to parliament through the National Freedom Party, Imam Sheikh, the current leader of the Allied Movement for Change. This party, I found it easy to join the Allied Movement for Change simply because of the people that I met to introduce me to this party. These are people who have a track record of accountability, of seeking justice. Now, in questioning them about the party, I discovered that the party is one that is based on Islamic ethos. In going to find out what Islamic ethos, I speak to you as a Christian that has spent more than a decade around Muslims and have learned to appreciate and acknowledge the goodness that is in Islam as a religion. So I found that the Islamic ethos that are being that the Allied Movement for Change are speaking of are things that South Africa needs. So the ethos that we're speaking about is accountability, seeking justice, love and compassion. These are things that we need from our leaders. These are the qualities that we need from our leaders when it comes to issues of accountability, in terms of the funds that are being provided by the state, in terms of the accountability, in terms of the work that is expected of them. These are people that have a track record. I myself am surrounded by great leaders amongst us. Today I met one that I had, it's been a while that I've been trying to meet, the leader of the AM4C in Gauteng.
In believing those different political parties, but it's built on several factors that I think the ANC does meet. The first is that track record. The reality is we've had incredible gains. Right now, load shedding is 61% better this time in this particular period in comparison to last year. We've got more than 1.5 gigawatts that have just come onto the grid, and that's also why you're seeing more renewable energy coming on, and that's why you're seeing even less load shedding. That's one example of the things that we've done. But the reality is we're also the only political party that has the highest level of transparency from all of them. And I know this is a difficult one for people to accept, but we are the only political party that has hurled ourselves before a state capture commission. And we are the only incumbent party or governing party in the whole world who has gone to these extreme lengths to cleanse the party. We have the step-aside proposition. We've ensured that our list, many people have been taken off the list, and even now there are disciplinary processes ongoing for those who haven't gone into the Integrity Commission. So accountability, another element of trust, is also met. But there's also an importance here in consistency on delivering on those promises. And this is the big one. Right now, the Presidential Youth Stimulus Package has helped 1.7 million young people get into jobs. There's 32 billion rand that's now moving the economy specifically for youth unemployment. We've got huge amounts of foreign direct investment that has come on. And you have an administration that's done three very important things. The first very important thing has been to recapacitate state institutions, such as the NPA, the Hawks, the SIU, etc. And that's fundamentally important. Number two, the fight against corruption has been fundamental in our approach. And of course, number three, we've been looking at those core issues that are facing South Africans. We even have a Minister of Electricity because of how important these issues are. And of course, the last point is on Palestine, which I will unpack in the next few minutes. Thank you.
You can just hold the mic there. Thank you very much, Fasiha, for that. That's a good starting point, because the rest of you are trying to unseat the ANC from office. Carl Niehaus, we've obviously not prepared for you to be on the panel tonight, but I'll pose this question to you. The EFF is the third largest political party in South Africa. You've been around for 10 years. You have sided with the ANC and you've opposed the ANC. And the EFF has gotten a reputation of flip-flopping on major issues, particularly in terms of allegiances. Why should South Africans trust the EFF?
Because the EFF is consistent in terms of our policy. Juanita, I think what you confuse is, on the one hand, the fact that the EFF doesn't enter into coalitions. It enters... No, listen. I want to explain to you what the difference is. We enter into an agreement which takes us to the point where we can implement our policies.
Which is a coalition.
And at that point where that policy is no longer able to be advanced, the EFF is no longer interested in that arrangement. So that is the reality. In Ekurhuleni, which you specifically referred to, the economic freedom fighters are doing outstanding work. Despite all the shenanigans that went on, we ended up with an unqualified financial audit. We've got MMCs in that municipality who are delivering, who literally, physically, a couple of times have been stopped by the Democratic Alliance, members of the DA, it's a pity they're not here today, to stop MMCs from going out, stopping sewage spillages, dealing with electricity issues, etc. Now let me really just raise this issue of load shedding, because I hear the African National Congress telling us about the great success of the number of days of no load shedding. Well, it's interesting and cynical, isn't it, that in the run-up to the election, suddenly load shedding comes to an end. Very similarly to what happened during the time of the Rugby World Cup. Now, I don't know. I didn't know electricity is so intelligent that it knows when there's a World Cup. But certainly, the clever, sly politicians of the African National Congress is capable of manipulating the load shedding schedule so that we don't have load shedding now in the run-up to the elections. But mark my words, let the 29th of May come, 12 o'clock, level 6 load shedding, so that we can count the votes in the dark, so that we can cheat in the dark. Because the essence of the African National Congress, and I conclude with this, the essence of the ANC as it exists today is cheating, manipulating, undermining South Africa and the integrity of South Africans, causing a reality
Thank you very
where
much.
this country has collapsed under ANC rule. There is no progress. It is not an upward
Thank you very much, Mr.
trajectory.
Niehaus. I have to
It
stop
is
you now. I
right
have to stop
down.
you.
Thank you.
Wait, no heckling, no heckling.
We're playing by the rules. You must also play by the rules on time.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's keep it as cordial as possible. Mr. Niehaus, I've just recalled that you were in the ANC until very recently. So that's just a point I wanted to say. But Irfan Mangera from RiseMzansi, you are fashioning your election campaign that South Africa needs new leaders. But we don't know who you are because you have not been tried and tested. So how then should people give you a blank check?
I think in a multi-party democracy, and specifically what people fought for, today we remember Tambo, for example. We didn't know many of those leaders. They were known in those communities that they came from. That's what RISE has done. We put together a team of leaders who come from their communities, who come from constituencies. So community not just in the geographic sense, but those who are experts in the field of business, of academia, and so on. You would know that, for example, Prof. Nick Benadel, the founder of Gibbs, is a leader in his own right. But he speaks to a constituency and he comes from that. That constituency knows him. They know that he's capable of building an organization. The same with myself. I've worked in the Kathrara Foundation youth program. I've built that program. There's 32 youth clubs today functioning that I have capacity to showcase. There's tangible leadership ability. The same with all of us, Songezo Zibi, Vuyiswa Ramakgopa, all of us who've had that experience. In a democracy like ours, it's important that we put forward the candidates, and this is what we fought for and why many other parties started putting out publicly their lists, is because we want the public to engage the leaders more tangibly and more transparently. And this allowed us to go through an independent panel who actually reviewed each and every one of our candidates to make sure that they're capable of actually being on our lists. We were also, equally myself, before I could even be on a list, had to go through an independent panel. Part of that was screening and making sure there's no criminal records, and so on.
Mohammed Lockhart, ActionSA is essentially a breakaway from the Democratic Alliance. Herman Mashaba used to be the mayor of Johannesburg on a DA ticket. What sets you apart from the Democratic Alliance in your promise for South Africans?
Can you hear me?
You can use that one. You can go ahead.
It's on. Okay, thank you, Konita. I appreciate that question. I think the answer to that is that simply we're not pandering towards a specific demographic as the DA does. We should ask the people that have left the DA why they've left the DA. And the answer is quite simple. The DA has changed its entire politics into in a manner that doesn't suit the needs of all South Africans. That's why they're not here on the panel tonight. I mean, that says it all. And I just want to say one more thing. It's not just ActionSA that broke away from the DA. It's also RiseMzansi, formed from Makashule Ghana, many former DA representatives that are in that party. Irfan can disagree, but it's true.
All right. Tapelo Aman, let's talk to you. 31,000 people voted for Al-Jama-ah in 2019. That increased to 61,000 people in the local government elections. You have a seat in parliament. Have you done justice with that seat in parliament?
We have. So one of the achievements in parliament is the Muslim personal law, the marriage bill, that cuts across all racial groups and ethnicity, not only limited to Islam. I wish I had enough time to unpack, but unfortunately I can't. The president just came from Libya to negotiate the deterrent weapons on behalf of the Palestinians. That's another achievement, and he's the first person who called for the government to arm the resistant movement of the Palestinians. There's a whole lot of achievements that we've done, and not only in parliament, including the city of Johannesburg where we're governing, and including where we are giving the ANC, we see it as a liberation movement, precisely. We are a only trusted party at this stage The Democratic Alliance approached us when they wanted to constitute government in the city of Johannesburg, but we told them that on principle we'll never work with you because you have racist policies. And the political surpluses on my left here, they also approached us as a proxy of Helen Zille to say, hey guys, come, let's work together. I have a strong footprint in Muslim communities, so we told him the answer was clear. So over and above that, we also declared the city of Johannesburg to be a free apartheid zone when the DA and the ActionSA purged black professionals. And even now in their manifesto, they say, when we take power in the provincial legislature, we are going to get rid of the doctors because our hospitals are collapsing. Then you'd ask yourself, why are they collapsing? Then they say no, because it's cadre deployment. But hospitals and doctors are people who are qualified to work in that space, you understand? So we advocate for justice because justice is universal. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ahmad. Itani, I mean, by your own admission, not much is known about the Allied Movement for Change. Mazur Sheikh Imam was on a ticket of the NFP and was a backbencher in Parliament for the last 5 years. The NFP exists or doesn't. We'll ask the IEC that later. But what is your offering? And what is your offering to Muslim youth? And I want you to be brief, because I can't ask you specific questions because very little is known about you, about this party.
All right, thank you. Like I said in the beginning, the party has been in existence for some time now. It has contested 3 local government elections, of which it has shown growth, showing that there is support from the people on the ground, the respective communities in which it is contesting and winning elections. And as much as it has been growing in that fashion, it has reached out to other provinces and has been heard by people in other provinces, and they find it attractive and one party that they can join for one. Now, speaking of what is it that we offer as the Allied Movement for Change, is what I spoke to firstly, and it's accountability. That has been shown. The track record of almost everyone that I've worked with within the Allied Movement for Change is somebody that has got a track record for accountability within their respective spaces. So that is the first and most important thing that we offer.
All right, thank you very much. So we've heard from these representatives now. It's up to you, students, to ask them questions. What do you need to know to make up your mind in terms of who to vote for? We will first give students and young people an opportunity to ask questions. We'll take it by hand. There's a roving mic that I'm going to pass around, and we'll do 3 at a time. Please mention who you are addressing your question to, and keep your question to a question and not a political statement. Thank you very much. So 1, 2, and anyway, can we have a third hand? On that side, 3. Thank you very much.
Is that not working?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Firstly, I just want to ask EFF a question. They claim to advocate for youth leaders. However, there was no miscommunication in my understanding of who was supposed to speak tonight, and that was Mubarak Pasha. And he was hijacked by Mr. Kalniaus for this thing. So how do you explain that as EFF? And secondly, how do the parties intend to manage disagreements pertaining to governance if matters end in coalitions, both provincially or even nationally for that matter? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Romeo Sibeko. To Al-Jama-ah, I've got 2 questions. The first one is, what's Al-Jama-ah stance on education? And then my second question is, what's Al-Jama-ah stance on the 2-state solution that's been proposed by the ruling government on the Palestinian conflict? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have one question, a third question there.
Thank you for this opportunity. My question is for Mohammed Lokat at ActionSA. How, as young Muslims, can we trust an organization like ActionSA that has received direct funding from a known Zionist, who is Martin Moshal, who supports genocide of our Muslim brothers and sisters in Palestine? How can we support you guys?
All right. We'll do another round. Carl, do you want to answer, and then we'll take it from there?
Well, there's been no hijacking. In fact, I was ambushed because Mubarak was to be here on this panel, and he decided to request me to come. So, in all decency, obviously, I'm not going to refuse to come forward when I'm requested by my fellow fighter to do so. But I reiterate once again the fact that the Economic Freedom Fighters is a young political party with competent leadership that believes in education and believes that education is one of the most critical, foundational instruments that we can use to create jobs and to empower our people. You must have heard our Commander-in-Chief recently saying that he believes, and I agree with him, that President Nelson Mandela should rather have concentrated on the issue of free quality education than the provision of RDP houses. The EFF hopes, and we believe that there are strong indications that we can become the ruling party in South Africa. We are growing fast. The statistics in terms of the registration of young voters who are progressive, who want to see a new South Africa where economic freedom will come in our lifetime, are large. So under those circumstances, the Economic Freedom Fighters believe that we can be the governing party. We are not at this stage simply going to engage about the issue of what arrangements will have to be made if the voters give us a hung parliament. But whatever we do under those circumstances will be on the basis of that elections manifesto of 255 pages, of a clear policy program of the return of the land to the people, strong government that will control the commanding heights of our economy, again make sure that we're in control of our state-owned enterprises.
Thank you very much.
And that on an international level we follow progressive policies, including also the fight against apartheid Israel. That is where we stand. That is what we will take into any possible discussions if there is a hung parliament. But for now, we hope for a government led by the Economic Freedom Fighters.
Thank you very much, Mr. Niehaus. Tepelo Ahmad?
Thank you so much, moderator. Two things on education. We need to repeal the policy of education. One, we need to identify the foreign investment, and especially in Gauteng, because we have the mining belt from the east to the west. For an example, as you would take the mining companies that are operating within those communities, and then they must impart the artisan skill into the schools. That's one thing that you need to augment into the policies. You must teach the kids the IT, the artificial intelligence, artisans, and the likes, so that they can be self-sustainable when they exit those schools. Another policy that we need to repeal, it says when a child who lives with a disability, persons with disabilities from grade 1 to grade 12, they need special schools, special teachers. When they get to the varsity, especially MSA has to also advocate for this. There's no special schools, special teachers, and then they have a fallback. So that's one other, so our schools are not yet integrated as yet. So that's one policy that we need to strategically look into and repeal so that we can review it. Lastly, a position on Palestine. For us as Al-Jama-ah, Comrade Carl spoke about load shedding and the stalling time from the load shedding. And we've demonstrated that we've implemented. So I would like to say also to my comrade Fasiha, for us, the ICJ issue, it's a buying time tactic, because time and again, Israel still violates the ceasefire and the resolution of the ICJ. So they appeal to the emotions of the people who are sympathetic to the cause. So we want the government to invoke the Article 6 to remove the veto power of the United States from the United Nations, so that we strip the Zionists, their friends, naked from committing the genocide. Once we remove the USA from the United Nations Security Council, at least the Zionists will feel the pinch of what we've done.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ahmad. Mohammed Lokat.
Tabelo, you mentioned that ActionSA didn't want to go into coalition with Al-Jama-ah. I really wonder why, huh? You were asked about education, but you go on about mining. It's very interesting. Brother, I just want to be very clear. ActionSA firmly trusts the process of the ICJ. We firmly believe that a ceasefire is the most straightforward and immediate need as of now to prevent the hostilities in Gaza and Israel. And we're very clear on that. So what I think, and I'm going to tell you a story, right? Let me answer. Kamil, please. 6 years ago, before the last elections, I was at a Samnet event in Durban with Fawzia Peer, the former deputy mayor of Durban, and Enver Surti, the deputy mayor of education at that time. About 2 hours of the conversation, they spent 1.5 hours talking about the ANC's views on Palestine. When I asked them why is that, they started accusing me of being a DA supporter. I was in Durban over the weekend. Look at Durban now. Look at the collapse of the entire city. I'm from a place called Reservoir Hills. The house in front of my grandmother's house is hijacked by who knows who. And after repeated calls, no one has come to sort out that issue. So you tell me if this issue is something that they're playing on populism and the emotions of us, as opposed to actually implementing and delivering services on the ground. Right. Thank you.
I just want to, we have 15 minutes left of this discussion. Please, if we can just maintain decorum of the debate. This is about empowering South Africans on who to vote for. This is not about attacking each other. And I'm going to be very firm that if this debate descends into chaos, we will have to censor you and take the mic away. We're going to open up for three more hands. Like I said, we're mindful of time. Kamil, number one. Oh, no, the woman in the back, let's start with you. 1, Kamil, and then we're doing students. So we'll do 3, 4. Let me redo it. In the interest of democracy, let me take hands again.
We not have party supporters on the question.
All right. Can we raise hands again? So I'll do the lady in the back, 2, 3, 4. We'll come back to you.
Good evening, everyone. Well, my question is based on RiseMzansi. I heard you talking about your 5 core, what is it called? I beg your pardon. You spoke about your practical plans in regards to your 5 core values. So my question is, how are you going to practically work on inequality, injustices, and stuff like that? How are you going to actually solve those problems practically?
Thank you very much. In the interest of time, we'll do one-on-one, and you have a minute. I'm going to time you just so that you have a minute to answer, because we have a lot of questions to go through. So in the interest, we'll take one question, get an answer from a representative, and then keep it moving.
Thank you so much. 1 minute is not enough to answer this question, clearly. We've issued plans, and tomorrow at the Gandhi Hall, I'll speak to one of them and plan about how we intend to end hunger, because 20 million South Africans are on the spectrum of food insecurity. That's one. The second is people need land. They need land access, which means we need to give land to people to start growing food, whether they want to put up a business or their own home, so that we can restore dignity to people. The third is you need to get people economically active. But also, you can't do that if you have a safety challenge, where young entrepreneurs who are as young as students who want to build a business are being threatened in their own communities. And so the safety issue is part and parcel of this question. The fourth is, for us to grow this economy, we need to make sure we build enough capacity of the state so that the state can function and regulate private sector funding, so that we can ensure people have access to capital, whether it's capital for creative arts, whether it's capital for building and securing their own business. We need to be able to be a government that cares for people through giving off more access to opportunities. And lastly, Kanita, is one of the biggest hindrances in this entire system that we have, and I disagree with the education question, where half of young people are exiting school before they even finish matric.
Sure.
So we need to get young people skilled, and at least 1 million need to be upskilled in the next 2 years to 3 years if we want to shift this inequality problem.
My question is for Fasia from the ANC. What's the ANC's plan to tackle the problem of safety in rural areas? And what are y'all going to do to invest in rural areas where y'all draw much of your support? And I'm not talking, the ANC isn't losing votes on policy, I'm talking about action.
That's an excellent question. You're quite right. The ANC's focus has been far more holistic. So when we look at crime, when we look at safety and security, there's a multi-pronged approach. But I'm going to speak to the important one first, and that's fundamentally economically, right? If we create more opportunities and we create a more viable, sustainable state and a private sector that's able to grow as both an economy, it means we can create more jobs, more opportunities, and that's important, right? That's the first thing. The second thing, and there's a big debate about it, but there is plans to put more boots on the ground, especially in areas that have been underserviced and not looked after. If you look at the current budgeting and if you look at the manifesto, there's a huge focus on that. But also, we understand that our CPFs are very active in our communities, and that's something we don't want to leave behind. In fact, we want to empower CPFs along with the police so that we can have this, what we call a social compact, so we can partner with each other and ensure that there's something far more viable and long-term that we can look at in terms of safety. But I also want to speak to the rural element because it's different to what we experience in a metro. In a metro, we have a lot more police services. We have Metro Police, we have SAPS, we have all these different elements. Now, in rural areas, the biggest issue is around fundamental access. So it's about getting more stations, yes, but it's also about being very clever in our use of technology. And this is where I think the ANC is set apart. We are looking at the use of artificial intelligence in crime intelligence, number one, but number two, about how we can actually ensure that those who are on farms, both farm workers and farm owners, are actually the ones who benefit from this. So that's very important, and I'm glad for that question. I'm happy to also send you a link because there's more information on it.
Thank you. So I'm Isra, and I'm currently on the MSA Union. So I have two questions, both which I think speak to the challenges of university students, which I have witnessed. The first, it's a question to all the parties, although I know we might be limited for time, is the party stance on education policies that accommodate the religious freedoms and needs of students. Of course, looking at curriculum, but I think as university students, particularly accommodation for religious holidays, halal food, prayer facilities. And then the second question, also another challenge, is what are the party's plans for addressing the burden of student debt and improving access to higher education for all students?
So let's work this way. We'll start in terms of the first question down this way, and then the second question down that way. Is that fair? Can we limit to a minute each? Just in the interest of time, there's a lot of questions we have to go through. Mohammed, do you want to start?
Azra, Jazakallah for your questions. I think firstly, absolutely, freedom of religion is a constitutionally enshrined right, and we absolutely believe in that. On the second point, ActionSA believes that every student that has the ability to go to university should not be financially excluded if they're academically performing. That's absolutely what we stand for. On the flip side of that is that we really need to increase the throughput of students through the TVET colleges, especially in STEM fields, your science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. University is not the only direction that everyone can go through, and I think that speaks to Irfan's point as well. Most students don't even reach a stage where they can go to university. They drop out before matric, and that's absolutely something that's a part of ActionSA's manifesto, bolstering our education system top to bottom with a particular focus on early childhood development. Thank you.
So in summary, we're saying give a skill to the child who is unable to go to the varsity. That's why you need to integrate in the primary education and empower them. But in essence, my sister. So the mayor, Kabelo Kwamanda of Al-Jama-ah, has just signed an MOU with the varsities that are operating within the precinct of Johannesburg to exchange programs and to also empower them from the programs of the city in governance. So that's one other thing that we've achieved through Al-Jama-ah. We're not speaking a rhetoric, something that we are likely going to do, but it's something that we are already doing it. And also Al-Jama-ah taking into consideration that we haven't participated into student politics. We have societies that we've partnered with, the FBA, the MSA is one of our sister as Al-Jama-ah. And then we have the FBA, that is Faculty of Best Advisory. And then lastly, we have the Progressive Student Movement that is also in the varsities to assist where there's a shortage and a lack of those students in terms of intervention. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. It is very important to impart the element of accommodating every religion right from basic education level. It is important that we start at that level and not allow any institution to be limited to a specific religion or an approach of that nature. It is very important that we start practicing it at that level, that by the time that we reach to institutions of higher learning, each and every one has been imparted with that upon themselves. That is the stand of AM4C, to say we need to be preemptive in our actions. Speaking of preemptiveness, it is us looking at ourselves before we even get into power as a political power to say, how are we going to practice, how are we going to be once we are in power? And we start doing it from before we get into that position of power. So it is something that, starting from there, it is something that we look at finding solutions at grassroots. To add to what the former speakers have said, to say that we need to impart skills to those that are still in lower education, just to conclude. It is important to also consider that we need to impart skills that speaks to 4IR, to those that are still in basic education. Speaking to programming, it is one course that is very simple to impart on almost everyone and very useful in today's life and the future. Thank you.
Thanks. Kanita, please remind me the first question, because clearly there's a disconnect. So that we...
All right. So the question was, Azra, the question was around what political parties will do for students.
The first question, yes, accommodating religious freedom.
Thank you. Cool. Just needed that clarity because we're doing a second round, right, for the other question.
We may not.
Cool. Okay. So 100%, we have a constitution that was fought for and that people died for that protects the religious rights of students. As a student leader, I myself had to advocate for learners and students who wanted to write their exams after Eid and so on. The problem is we need to build this into our system, and currently it's not been built into the system. So we had to negotiate with each head of school of each university. And that's a bit of a tricky situation. So we need advocacy to reform those systems so that universities are more receptive to it. Two is we also need our student bodies to work with leaders and work with the reforms possible. Because I found, even as a student leader, on a Friday, lecturers will come to me and say, how come Muslim students aren't coming and it's 2 o'clock and a lecture is now at 2 to 5? And that's wrong also. And we have to be able to correct that, because we had Jummah time. After that, we also have to show up for universities and for our responsibility. And I want to lay that out. 100%, we need NSFAS to work. Unfortunately, it doesn't. And you're seeing in the last few weeks and months that whether it's the minister or those in charge of NSFAS, completely forgetting, but we're answering both, right? Okay.
Thanks, Ezra, and thanks for the team for organizing it. I'm also going to build on, and I think it's quite important, you know, my time in activism started at Wits University in the MSA, and ultimately it led to what we now know as fees must fall. So this question is fundamental to the seat that I currently hold and why it's so important. The first very important thing, sorry, there's some disturbance, I don't know what's going on. The first very important thing is that Irfan's quite right. Right now it's an ad hoc process, right? We have academic freedom, we have religious freedom, but there isn't really a way in which it's happening. Now, what we can do as an ANC-led government is get the Department of Higher Education to issue a circular to all institutions that says this is the actual, and we will be quite clear, this is when Eid is, this is when all the things are. Let us ensure that our Muslim students are not writing exams on those days. And right now, the Portfolio Committee Chair, Nompindulum Kachwa, is also a Fees Must Fall leader. Buti Manamela is the Deputy Minister. We have direct access to these people, and this is something that we can fight for. Very importantly on NSFAS, the alleviation of student debt is fundamental, right? That's what took us to the streets in 2015 and 2016. We have tripled the allocation to NSFAS. This does not take away from the crisis of the administration of NSFAS, and that's why we need the young people in this room to put their hand up and say they're going to be involved in the public sector, because we want the very best of our people to run our state-owned institutions. So it's not just about throwing money at an issue, it's about ensuring that we actually get the right implementation. Thank you.
Thank you. The Economic Freedom Fighters is absolutely committed to religious freedom and the right of expression of religious views and beliefs everywhere throughout this country. And we believe that especially there must be an effort to protect those that could be described as the minorities in this country, to be given that protection and that right of expression. As far as the situation of students are concerned, we are deeply concerned about the massive problem of student debt and the impact that it has on students' ability to be able to register and to study. We're deeply concerned about the lack of proper accommodation, the lack of proper care, and the lack of proper provision also for transport for students. And all of this relates to the failure of NSFAS, the corruption that there is in NSFAS, and the responsibility for that corruption has to be understood and accepted by the ANC and by the Ministry for Higher Education. I conclude. The EFF Student Command is in charge of all the universities in this country, and we have the trust of the people.
15 seconds more than your allocated time. Thank you very much. We have to wrap up the discussion tonight. I know there are a lot of questions, and the youth leaders will be available after this discussion for, I'm sure, to take questions from students directly. We have students who have been watching online and on television, and they've sent questions. There's just 2 questions that we want to pose to 2 leaders that are present here today. Irfan, you represent RiseMzansi. This question is for you, is to say, what is the political stance of RiseMzansi on the BDS movement? If you could just sum up for that, and then we go to the next question very quickly.
Thanks, Karnita. I think what's quite clear on our position on Palestine and then the BDS movement, because we fully support the idea that we need a 2-state solution ratified because of the global consensus on it. I personally don't believe that that's the case currently because of settler colonial violence, but we continue to advocate for it because it's a global consensus. On the BDS campaign, RISE has not developed the policies yet. It's something I'm personally going to put onto the table at our conference next year, because I think it's something that progressives should be advocating for, like I've done for the last 15 years.
Thank you very much. Fasiha, the ANC's case at the ICJ, this is from a student on WhatsApp, is commendable. The ANC has also overseen Israeli investment in South Africa and the normalization of ties, as well as no movement on sanctioning Israel. What is the reason for this contradiction?
All right, it's very important to note that the ANC was not the first people on the block to start. In fact, we were the first people on the block to start supporting Palestine from the very beginning point of the Palestinian liberation movement. And this is very important, right? The ICJ case is fundamental as well to this fight. We have stared down the Americans, we have stared down the Western bloc, and we have made a global stand, not only for Palestine, but the entire global South. And this is important because it is one of many steps that have been mentioned in this question that need to continue. Now what we're able to do, which we have, where do you see a state president come out wearing not just a Palestinian kufiya, but saying we actively support Palestinians at the cost of many, many things? Now we're looking at a potential regime change element, right? Because of the Americans being so upset with us. So The point that I'm making here is the ANC is unafraid to take bold and courageous decisions, starting with the ICJ. And the crisis here is if the ANC is not re-elected, what happens if ActionSA and Herman Mashaba at the front cover? Martin Michel, will he decide to continue the ICJ case? I highly doubt it. So we need to give the ANC a further mandate. We need to fight the ICJ case to the very end, and we need to bring a complete end of diplomatic ties with Israel. There is no question on the matter, and the ANC is very clear, and we will be moving in that direction very, very soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of an important discussion. I think that many students watching and present here today will possibly be closer to the big decision they have to make, which is who they should vote for. On the 29th of May, we have a date with democracy. We cannot give up our responsibility as citizens. It is important. What is it?
3 ballots. About 3 ballots.
All right. And just, I'm being told how to facilitate this discussion by student. All right. We'll get there. So, ladies and gentlemen, how we're going to end this discussion is 2 things. 1, voter education is superbly important. The MSA Union has a responsibility to teach young voters what is significantly different about this election. This election, there will be 3 ballots. You're voting on a national ballot, a regional ballot, and a provincial ballot. Absolutely important. Independent candidates are contesting for the first time. It is important to know that when political parties make unsubstantiated allegations against the integrity of the elections, is up to us as citizens to protect the integrity of this election, and for us to call out misinformation and disinformation where it exists. So that responsibility lies on you students to educate your peers on A, why it's important to vote, and secondly, how they should vote. And that's absolutely important. We are going to close, and given the time, it will take 6 minutes. I'm going to give us 40 seconds each, not a minute. 40 seconds to give your parting shot to students as we wrap up. And once we conclude, the students would like to take a group picture with the panelists here today.
Okay. Firstly, I just want to respond to you because you mentioned Herman Mashaba. So 2 points on that. The ANC's stance on Palestine is not a principled one. You're talking about the ICJ, but in the same week of the ICJ, the ANC, the state president that you mentioned, is sitting and posing with pictures with Hemeti, the man who's perpetrating a genocide of Muslims in Sudan. What is your response to that? And the second point is that you didn't answer the question that was posed by the student on WhatsApp. The ANC is allowing unfettered Israeli investment. Look at Clover, for example. What did the ANC do to that? Thank you.
Thank you. I would say the young voters and the new voters and old voters, not in age, but those who have been voting traditionally or religiously, must vote Al-Jama-ah because we are the only trusted political party today in South Africa. And also, the former Chief Justice Mogoeng says, in South Africa, there's only 2 effects, the Madiba effect and the Al-Jama-ah effect. So you must vote wisely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. The winds of change are blowing. Let us move with the change. And the Allied Movement for Change is the party for that. We are here for you. We have got the experience. We have got experienced members. We have got experienced leaders. We are going to do it for you. We are not going to make many promises. The one promise that we make is that we are coming to listen to you and deliver solutions to the problems with you. We do not have everything with us. You are part of the solutions. We are where we are because those that were advanced within society were part of the solutions. We are coming to take you to work with us in delivering these solutions. Thank you.
The next 5 years will be the most difficult one South Africa faces since 1994. We need to elect new leaders who are ethical, who are capable, and who have the capacity to lead. We need leaders who are, like my brother says, caring and who have empathy. Because if we don't do that, we're going to see the immaturity we currently see from the various parties in the establishment. For us, it's to build a safe and equal, a just, a united, and a prosperous South Africa. And we think it's possible in one generation. But for that to happen, every citizen needs to rise up. It's going to take each and every one of us, including the political parties that are here. Because like you said, it's a collective effort.
Thank you. The African National Congress remains the only organization that can truly continue to liberate South Africans. We've done the political work. It's now around economic opportunity and economic freedom in that element. It's very important to also note I belong to the ANC actively, which means I fundamentally believe in a non-racial, non-sexist, egalitarian society. The ANC has provided more opportunities in terms of jobs, in terms of access to basic services, and in terms of basic livelihoods, and we will continue to do that for the next 30 years. And just a side point, Mashaba went to Israel 2 years ago on a state-sponsored visit, so I'll just leave it at that. Let's continue to fight for the people of Palestine, not just as the African National Congress, but on the 30th of May as an ANC-led government that will continue to see through the ICJ case led by Minister Naledi Pandor. Thank you.
South Africa is in a downward spiral. We are heading for total disaster. The only way to avoid it is to put a young, strong, democratic, well-organized, truly economic, emancipatory, revolutionary party in charge, and that is the economic freedom fighters. It is only the EFF that you can trust that the land can be returned to the people, expropriation of land without compensation, that real sustainable jobs will be created, not the kind of fake jobs that Panyaza Lesufi is now creating. And the load shedding, which is human created by the ANC, will come to an end. And finally, the ANC will not ever be able to save South Africa. The economic freedom fighters will refuse any Zionist money, and only the EFF can be trusted to save South Africa and to help to fight against Israel. My apologies.
Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of our discussion. I would like to thank the MSA Union for appointing me as your facilitator tonight. I would like to wish all of you political parties well for the 29th of May. And more importantly, I think we need to uphold this South Africa because it's all we have. Thank you very much.